Yeah, I think like I'm about to get like into honest talk. So
Because this disease is so overwhelming for everybody involved,
and that became a horrible thing for us, for our marriage, for our livelihood, for our self-care. There was no self-caring.
yeah, and boundaries really are to protect yourself at the end of the day.
Hey, Palmer fam, I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Nick.
And we are back for another episode 6. And we are so excited to be here again. All right, so let's start off today, Nick, with some Palmer updates.
All right, Palmr updates. So we officially have some new products on the website. Really excited. A lot of this stuff took a long time, way longer than it should have, but it's on. Go buy it now. And if you want to buy anything and it arrive before Christmas, you need to order it right now.
Important.
We are told by most of the carriers, you need to have order shipping by the 13th to guarantee delivery in the United States, anywhere in the United States, because we ship from Florida. If you're in the Southeast, that is pushed back a little bit because things will get to you quicker. Well, obviously, if you're on the West Coast, it will take a full week or so to get out there. And so you will just need to do priority shipping to guarantee delivery if it's past the 13th, basically. So get your orders in. Very important.
Yes, and happy holiday shopping. And if you're anything like me, you're a late shopper. So this is good information to know. So let's get started on today's episode. And today, this one is about blended family dynamics with type 1 diabetes. And I think this is a very common question that we get because people are like, well, how does this work? How do you guys do this? So let's get started.
Yeah, let's go. Man, this will be a deep conversation for sure. So
Yeah. All right, so let's get started. Okay, Nick, so how did you introduce type 1 diabetes management routines? To me especially, because you already had a routine going down. So when I came into the family, how did you kind of go about teaching me everything?
it was really important that we started slow. Because this disease is so overwhelming for everybody involved, we had to go really slow and make it simple. So for example, starting out, I just wanted her to understand what she's looking at when we talk about the numbers.
Yeah.
Looking at the Dexcom, what is the range, what is low, what is high, all that type of stuff. Because for anybody, that is always step one. And so from there, we would then start slowly introducing other concepts to you, like, okay, well, we got to give insulin when they are high to bring them down or after they eat, but I'm not worrying about carb counts or anything like that. I just want to get them comfortable with here's how you give insulin. The good news is both my kids know how to give themselves insulin, but it's always good, especially for my daughter, to double check, make sure she's doing it right. And so we're like, all right, this meal was 40 carbs. She needs to give herself 40 carbs of insulin. Did she do it right? I got you started doing those two things, understanding that, hey, they go low. We got to give them something to eat to get their blood sugar up, Gatorade, gummies, something. Or if they're high, what do we got to do to get them down? That was always step one. And we went months and months and months with you just knowing that, right?
Yeah, the bare minimum. And I think, too, it even took a while to fully get me integrated on the app for it. Just because I think you knew this app can be an easy spiral because you have access to the numbers 24/7, even with when the kids are not with us. I think you purposely did that, and I'm thankful that we took our time with downloading the app on my phone and having access to that and having alarms going off and everything like that.
Yeah. And eventually from there, I think we then went to, understanding counting carbs. And all right, well, if we gonna have a meal, what are we looking at here? I think that was really kind of the next step. And then from there, it was, and this was, man, I feel like this was over a year into our relationship when I finally was like, okay, let me teach you how to actually change their equipment.
Yeah, and fun fact, we actually recorded it
Yeah.
so that we could give it to grandmas, siblings, everyone, anybody that would potentially be taking care of Parker and Evie, they would be able to reference back to this video. And I think one thing I want to hone in on as being someone new to the type 1 diabetes world, it was so fascinating to me that you're actually carb counting. You're not counting the sugar.
Hmm.
I just immediately thought with type 1 diabetes, okay, of what it is, I always thought I had to look at the sugars in something, not the carb count. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that just never really crossed my mind. And my mind was blown that it's the carb count that you're actually counting and then giving insulin according to that.
Yeah, it is crazy for people to understand that's what the concept is,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, the carbs break down and turn into sugar.
Yeah.
And that's what really affects the blood sugar and stuff. But yes, as you were saying, we made a video, and that's something I would definitely recommend for anyone who is trying to introduce a new caregiver is to make a recording of it. We all have video on our phones nowadays. Take it, record it, share it with your family so they have access to it at any time. And again, my kids know how to change their equipment for the most part, but you want to make sure everybody involved knows all the steps and what needs to happen. And we just found that being a really easy way to go about it.
And I think too, to kind of hone in, and I'm sure other families that have T1D warriors in their family can relate to this. When we have the kids, since we are a blended family, so we have the kids 1 week on, 1 week off. When we have the kids, we rarely have the kids not with us. And what I mean by that is like sleepovers or you and I going to do something and we have a babysitter or any of those kind of situations when the case has come up that we had to do something or something was planned on one of the days that we have had the kids, it has been so special to us because through the Touched by Type 1 Diabetes organization community, we've met teenagers and young adults that have type 1 diabetes themselves that have become babysitters for us. And that has been game changing for us because we are able to go off and do the event and leave the kids in hands that are more than capable to handle it, know everything that could possibly go wrong and everything that could go right with type 1 diabetes. They're there, they got it. But then also, I think for sleepovers, we've done it a few times with your parents, obviously, and then we did it one time with my sister, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. And it was ironic to see this kind of her feelings, her different range of emotions that she had while she had Parker and Evie at their house. And a lot of it, I would sum it up as a lot of anxiety. And I remember when the first alarm went off, she's like, all the alarms are going off, all of them. And we're like, wait, they're like both going off at the same time. And she's like, all of them. And it was really just like one of them, but it's so loud and it's like startling for someone who isn't accustomed to it. She did an awesome job. We're so grateful for her. But again, when that happened, correct me if I'm wrong, you were pretty much up most of the night still
Yes.
because you're having to be in communication. If there's a low or a high, like she's going to have to treat it and you're going to have to tell her how to treat it and what to do to treat it.
I think sleepovers are the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thankful that my parents, because they've been around for so long, know how to handle everything. So I really don't have to worry about them. But for anybody else, a Parker want to do a sleepover at a friend's house. I've let him do that before, or staying at your sister's house with with his cousins. Those people don't fully understand everything. And takes a big trust to know that, well, the alarms are gonna go off and they need to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go deal with that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of anxiety that was just really hard. And I think that's also important is you need to be able to have those people in your life who can help you with it, but you need to make it as simple as possible that you're not trying to throw everything onto them and set them up for success. And I really feel like that's what we try to do with like your family, for example, is let's keep it as simple as possible for them and let them just know that if they go low, this is what you need to do. You need to give them Gatorades
Mhm.
or some type of snack. And when they're high, they need to know that it's time to give them insulin. We're not worrying about them knowing what to do in that situation outside of, by the way, they're high. Like we'll give them a call. Hey, can you let Parker know he needs to give himself a correction real quick? And this is what he does. And he can handle all that for them and not put any of that pressure onto them because you're right. It is so crazy and we saw it with your sister the one time she tried to do it. She did a fantastic job,
Mhm.
but you can see that anxiety happening where it's, "Oh my god, I'm responsible for this." It is a lot for anybody. Go slow.
Yeah. And I think too a message that we should bring up is that we've had instances where my sister, for example, has offered to take Parker and Evie for a sleepover or for a day of swimming in their pool and everything like that. And we have been hesitant to agree to it, not because we're ungrateful. And I know in her mind, she's trying to do us a favor, like trying to give us a break, like trying to help us out. And we completely 100% appreciate it. But sometimes doing these certain things is actually more work for us, even if that means that we're not even there.
Yep.
So, for example, I think the swimming is something that not if you don't have type 1 diabetes or someone in your family with it, you don't really think about it. But in reality, with our kids, when they do go swimming and they love to do it, they take their equipment off. You don't have access to the numbers on the app. You have to continuously, I would say about every 30 minutes, be checking them, having them get out of the pool, dry off, get close enough to their equipment so that the phone and the apps and everything syncs back up and you're able to see their numbers. And I think something at the beginning for me that made me very, like, nervous was when they're swimming, for example. They swim so much and so hard, they burn so much, right?
Mhm.
And that makes a diabetic go low. So they're very quickly they could go low when they're doing something as swimming and you don't have your they don't have the equipment connected to them, so you don't really know that they're going low. So that is why you're constantly having to check it. And for a situation like that, where is it so extremely nice that my sister is offering this? 100%. But in all reality, one of us is going to have to be there in order to make this day go by smooth and where we're just not having to be completely glued to our phone because that would be the other option for us to literally us be like attached to our phones, reminding her to take them out on a break and everything like that. I think that that is something really important to put out there and just say of all these families and friends that want to help a type 1 diabetic family and really don't know how to do it and they like offer something and maybe that family doesn't accept it or doesn't go along with it, it doesn't mean that they're not grateful. They are so extremely grateful to have you as part of their support system. But sometimes family members and caregivers have to think about, all right, is this going to cause more work to us than actually give us a break? And how can we manage it with still having the kids be able to do it? Because that's really important to us. We want our kids, when we have them, to be able to do everything their cousins are doing, everything that their friends are doing. Like, we don't want their type 1 diabetes to come in the way of it. So I think just having that special place for those family members and those caregivers of like, hey, they do appreciate me, but it probably will cause more work to them. Or if we might be a little moody sometimes and we might not even know it, and we go to a family event and, we could answer you in a way that could not be the nicest or whatever the case may be. Like, we are just so happy to have a support system, but sometimes you have to have that little space for those caregivers because they're tired. We're doing so much. We have so much going on in our heads that we just need that extra little grace from everyone.
Definitely.
So, another question, Nick, that comes up for us all the time is how do you handle co-parenting and different parenting styles, especially when you have 2 kids with type 1 diabetes?
First off, because these are my kids and Rebecca is the stepmom coming into the relationship, it is my responsibility at the end of the day. That doesn't mean she's not there to support me, but her job is to support me, not do everything for me.
Mhm.
And if you go into this is just a pro tip for any parent looking to blend a family, you need to make sure that your spouse doesn't feel like you're just dumping their kids onto them. Now it's their responsibility. Oh, that because if I would have came in and go like, oh well, you're now the mom, you do everything that a mom should do, our relationship would not have worked out.
No.
So that's step one, right? The other thing is that because these are my kids, I need to make sure I'm handling the majority of the work. That doesn't mean Rebecca can't come in and assist me or say, hey, I'll handle this time, but I need to be handling most things. And that comes to discipline. I think discipline is a very important thing. I don't want Rebecca to feel like she is the bad person or the kids to look at her in a negative light. Is there times that Rebecca has to step in and discipline the kids, yell at them? Of course. But I need to be the primary one taking care of most of the bigger things. And that's really important. And then also, when it comes to the T1D, I am handling all the major stuff. I change all the equipment on the days that we are both together. Obviously, there's been times where I'm gone and she needs to change it, and that's fine. She can handle that. But I'm going to change the equipment. I'm going to track everything. I'm going to be the one to get up at night, give them Gatorade when they're going low or going up overnight. We got to give them some insulin, get a correction to come down. I am handling the majority of that because this is my kids and it's my responsibility. And Rebecca's there to support me and help me, but I can't put that pressure onto her.
Yeah. And then talk us through a little bit of like any strategies or tips that you have in place with the kid's mom to deal with co-parenting the kids with them both having type 1 diabetes. So I know for a fact you have a calendar that's a shared calendar that you have the dates of when the equipment needs to be changed and all that sort of stuff and appointments and everything like that.
Yes. Trying to co-parent with a ex-spouse while dealing with type 1 diabetes is extremely hard. First off, you have the fact that we both want to do things differently. Our priorities are different at the day. Me and Rebecca are a lot more wanting to make sure we are on top of their diabetes and the numbers are always great, where their mom is a little bit more relaxed, I guess you can say, about where they're at. But I think one of the biggest challenges really is just trying to manage the equipment, right? What I did was I set up a calendar, everything's set up. She doesn't really have to do anything, but it will track when all the equipment needs to be changed. The tandem pump needs to be changed every 3 days to work the best possible. That pump can work for a few more days. You can get 4, 5, 6 days going with it, but it starts degrading itself the longer it goes. You're not going to get as good a result. The pump needs to change every 3 days. The Dexcom is changed every 10 days. And so I have a calendar set up that has all that information on there because I even need to remember for myself, hey, this is the night that equipment needs to get changed.
Mhm.
So I check the calendar every night and be like, all right, Parker, your pump's getting changed tonight. We should know it because things always do go wrong. The Dexcom doesn't get the 10 days, or the pump needs to be changed for some other reason. It is the responsibility of the other parent to update the calendar. Everything is set up recurring. So you just got to move the date and it will automatically update the change every 3 days. So the other parent knows. And while I'm very much on top of it, the mom isn't. And so that's been a huge challenge for me because every time the kids come back to my house, I literally have to go sit there with their equipment and check and be like, all right, when was the equipment change? What is the next change date? And then go through and physically update the calendar because there's been times where I didn't know she didn't update the calendar. Everything's off. And I get on my days, I'm like, oh, there's nothing that needs to be changed. And then all of a sudden the Dexcom died. And I'm like, why did it die. Oh, because she changed the day early and didn't tell anybody or update the calendar. That has been, I think, one of the most challenging things in two separate households.
Yeah, and I think for me, being a bystander in all this and being Nick's support, I think the more system and strategy you can build with the co-parent and having a calendar and being strict with these things, I think that all these methods really decrease the kids having to get involved, because it's still, unfortunately, like with a divorced household, divorced parents, there's going to be a lot of back and forth. Like, I mean, that's just, it is what it is, and that's a part of it. But for me, it's really, I've always, and I've reminded you, like, hey, this isn't a conversation you should have with Parker, for example. This is a conversation you should have with their mom. Parker still, at the end of the day, is a child. Yes, he has type 1 diabetes. Yes, he's had it for a while. Yes, he's getting to the ages where he should be more responsible for his diabetes and in charge of his body and stuff like that. But there's certain conversations that need to be had with the co-parent. And I think the more that there is a strategy in place, a calendar in place, and being organized with it, I think that that eliminates the back and forth and the kids, like, almost taking on that emotion of like, oh, this didn't happen. Now my mom is going to be upset or my dad's going to be upset. I think that kind of eliminates them and kind of takes them out of the middle of it and kind of makes it the journey a little bit easier when managing type 1 diabetes. At the end of the day, I mean, it's just hard. And I've heard from other people that have connected with us. I heard a story of somebody that was at their endo appointment, and the family next to them was a newly divorced couple, and then their son had just recently got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And they were in there, it was their appointment to, like, get equipment, and the parents could not agree on anything. Like, it just was a disagreement the entire time. As there's already those emotions of disagreements, things are gonna be done different parenting styles, and then you add in type 1 diabetes, I think we both learned very quickly on, we can only control what we can control, and that's what's in our house when we have them. And then also moving forward with, like, a schedule, like, that is the only thing that we can do. We cannot control what happens when they're not with us. We cannot control what does get changed and what doesn't get changed. We just can't. And unfortunately, with type 1 diabetes, I speak for the both of us, you want to, like, stand around with a safety blanket underneath everyone to not make something go horribly wrong with it. But you just cannot. And I think you come to a point where you're saying, we're already in a difficult situation. We're in a blended family. However you look at it, there's going to be challenges and there's going to be seasons that are more difficult than others. But then for us, we also have a chronic illness. Both of the kids have it. So it's really realizing, and I know that this took us a while to really learn and really live with it every day, is we cannot control what we cannot control.
Mhm.
And I think something that we really did kind of early on, wish we would have done it sooner, is when we don't have the kids, we turn the notifications off for the equipment. And that's not because, oh, we don't have the kids, like, we forget about their type 1 diabetes. No, that's not the case. I mean, you have the widgets of them
Yeah.
on the screen, like, you still see it all the time, but it's just not that notification every time they're high, that notification every time they're low, because we were finding when we didn't have the kids, we still would live with these notifications on, so they'd be going off in the middle of the night. Like, it didn't matter. It was going off all the time. And that became a horrible thing for us, for our marriage, for our livelihood, for our self-care. There was no self-care when we were still involving ourselves in a situation that we have zero control over. So I would say that that would be a big tip that I would give as a caregiver to people with type 1 diabetes, and also being in this blended family dynamic. You have to take care of yourself and you have to learn what things are in your control and what things are just out of your control. And even as scary as that might sound, to lose control of something, you have to let it go, because if not, you're going to destroy yourself and then you're not going to be good for your two kids.
Yeah, I mean, that is a great tip because it really was a game changer for us the day that we decided we're just gonna turn off the notifications. The kids leave the house. It's not our responsibility for the next 7 days, so we're gonna turn off the notifications. Yes, we still see the numbers. I have the widgets. We're opening the Dexcom, checking how they're doing, but we're not having the alarms go off all the time, the highs, the lows, all of that, because it became too much. It actually just increased our anxiety because we're not there for it. Is everything going okay? And that was a game changer for us.
Yeah.
And so that's such a great tip. Is there any other kind of tips or advice you think you would give a new family coming together, blending a family when there is a type 1 diabetic involved or just in general, doesn't even have to be a illness involved necessarily, but what do you think would be some good advice for that?
Yeah, I think, like, I'm about to get, like, into honest talk. So I think a
Ooh,
few things.
honest,
So
this is scary. I don't know where this is going.
coming from a stepmom. So I think the first thing, when I first, we blended our family and I first moved in with you, you and the kid's mom had this kind of agreement that if there was a low in the middle of the night or an urgent low, that you would immediately call the other parent to make sure they got it. Okay. When in all reality, if you kind of read that or it's on paper, that sounds lovely. And that sounds like a great idea to have. But that leaves the door open for communication to be abused. And communication was getting abused. And it was just things that didn't need to be communicated in the middle of the night, late at night, right? And that's our sacred time together because I've mentioned before, sleep is so important for me, I know personally, but that's when you're winding down in the day. And if you don't have the kids, I can't imagine the stress you would put yourself under when you're going to sleep on the weeks that you don't have the kids, knowing, oh, I'm still going to have to listen out for that alarm because I'm going to have to be the backup alarm for someone else when they're not in my house, type of thing. So I think that you had to build a boundary around that communication of if it's an emergency, 100%. Communicate. We want to know. We want to be in the know of things. But if it's just something, it's a regular low that happens at night,
Mm.
it doesn't need to be communicated every single time it happens. Now, if it's a low that's happening for over an hour, over 30 minutes, now we're getting into urgent lows, yeah, there needs to be communication. So I think that that's something that we struggled with at the beginning, and then we definitely had to build a boundary around it. And then I would say, as a stepmom, speaking to other stepmoms or a caregiver, when you are in this dynamic of a blended family, people have to earn the ability to communicate with you. You're not just this, oh, you're the stepmom. I should be able to communicate with you whenever I want because I'm the parent of these kids. No, they have to earn the ability to communicate with you. And I'm talking about earn the communication from the other parent. So not the parent that you're married to or the parent that you support, but the other parent. And I always believed, and I know that we tried to do this when we first were gonna thinking of blending the family and moving in together, is like reaching out to that other parent, having them feel comfortable with you, having them get to know you a bit, knowing our plans on how we're going to teach the type 1 diabetes and how we're going to go about that. And because, that is something super important. And you need to feel comfortable as the other parent of, hey, whoever's in the other person's life needs to know that our two kids have type 1 diabetes. If the communication is abused, don't feel bad of taking that communication away. And what I mean is, if it's being abused, calls, phone calls, text messages, it doesn't need to happen because, and I learned this very later on, but it's been a game changer for me because you really have to ask yourself the questions. does that person need to have communication with you? Do they need to have access to you 24/7? And in all reality, when you ask yourself that question, the answer is no. Who they need to have access to is the actual other parent, not you as a step parent. So you're kind of just like, again, a support, a second person there, supporting your spouse, supporting who is in your household. But everything outside of that, if it's being abused, it needs to be ended. There needs to be a line in the sand and of saying, hey, like, if you need, the other parent is here. They're here for them. They're here. I'm here supporting them. But it doesn't need to be a direct link to me. And I think that I struggled with that at the beginning because, especially with the kids having type 1 diabetes, I felt like I had to be on call 24/7 as well. Even when people would ask me, like, do they really need to have access to you all the time? I'd be like, well, yeah, like the kids had type 1 diabetes. Like, could you imagine? Like, they have to have, like, let's say Nick sleeps through a phone call. Like, I need to be the next, be there and handle it. In all reality, it's no. Because if Nick sleeps through an alarm, then I can wake up Nick or I can help with that. But the only person I'm helping is Nick. I'm not going to be of any help to the other parent in another house. I'm just not. I'm not. And I'm in one house and I'm with the other parent. I learned that. I unfortunately took very long to learn that, but I think it's something that needs to be talked about and needs to be put out there. Not everyone needs to have access to you, and not everyone needs to have access to you all the time. You are in charge of who has access to you, who can communicate with you, how they communicate with you. You are in charge of that. Nobody else but yourself. And if you don't stand up for yourself and stand up for your boundaries and what you need, you're going to get taken advantage of. So I really hope that if someone's listening to this, they learn it sooner than I did, and it can be something useful they can use in their life as a blended family.
Aren't you so thankful that when we met, I had the world's best boundaries?
Oh.
Um, so no, in all seriously, like my boundaries were horrible, and it's something that I had to really learn. And I didn't even know what boundaries I think were.
Yeah.
It was that bad.
And
It,
it wasn't just with the kid's mom, it was with everybody.
oh,
You
it's
had no
everybody.
boundaries with anybody.
No, it really
It was
is.
just a free for all with everybody and in every part of your life, with work, with friends, with family. It was just everything.
Yeah, and boundaries really are to protect yourself at the end of the day. It's something that I had to go above and beyond and learn, and I'm still always learning it, but I feel like I've come such a long ways, thankfully, with the help of Rebecca and therapists and all that type of stuff. But you have to set those boundaries. And I think what you said about who has access to you is so important because if you have that person who, and it could be a friend, it could be a coworker, anybody who triggers you, or know that every time they reach out, there's going to be drama or something,
Or they just merely take advantage of
or take
communicating
advantage.
with you.
Yes, you have to be able to put those boundaries up, and people have to be able to earn that trust.
Mhm.
And if you abuse it, then you take it away.
Mhm.
End of story. And that's something that we did. We both had to really learn, and it's so powerful. I mean, I really think that was some great advice that you have, and it was raw energy of what you went through blending a family because it is hard.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think another thing to talk about is, and kind of to bring up and share, we actually went to dinner over the weekend with some friends, and they brought up that both sets of their parents are divorced. So they have, and their parents are remarried, so they all come from blended families. Our friends' kids don't come from a blended family. Their kids said a comment to their grandma, who's not their blood grandma. It was really just the little girl was stating the facts of what it is. It's like, you're not my blood grandmother, which is 100% true. Like, in all reality, if you ask a child, yeah, that is what it is. But I just think having these conversations of what blended families are, and then our friends were telling us, oh, we were so mortified when she said that because we really love her. Like, she does so much for our family. She is the kid's grandmother, just because they're not blood doesn't mean that she's not a grandmother, which 100% is right too. And the advice that I had to them was having that conversation with your kids of what that person means to you. Hey, this isn't my birth mom, but this person was very special to me in my life, and they were a big part of my life, and I love her very much, and I have this relationship with her. And I think just having those conversations, not making it a weird conversation. There doesn't need to be weirdness about it, because as sad as it is, most families are divorced. Like, unfortunately, like, it's just the reality of the life we're living in. Blended families are not that strange anymore. It may have been back in the day, but it's really not anymore. So, really having that conversation, the honest conversation with kids or with friends or with anybody of like, hey, this is my stepmom, this is my stepdad, this is my half brother, half sibling, like they mean a lot to me. They were a close part of my family. Let me share with you a little bit of what they mean to me. I think would be a good way to go about talking about blended families. And then one other thing that I would hone in on is filtering the dynamics of what gets brought into your house. Meaning, when the kids come back after 7 days of not being in our house, there's a filtering moment that goes down. And Nick and I have come up with a routine and a system that has worked. And again, we learned this all through the help of therapy of what is going to best serve our family. But on Mondays, when Nick gets the kids back, it's always Nick who goes and picks up the kids from school. If they're out of school because it's summer or a holiday, it is always Nick doing these transitions. And the same goes for drop-offs. I don't involve myself with drop-offs. I don't involve myself with pickups. I just don't put myself in those situations. And I know other stepmoms, I've heard from other stepmoms, they partake in them. I just do not personally, because it just wouldn't work for me. I need to think about myself and my mental health and take care of myself. So I made a decision from the very beginning. I'd never been a part of drop-offs or pickups. The importance of that, like, kind of filtering time that Nick has with the kids before they come back to our house is kind of like him talking to them. Hey, how was your week? How are you guys doing? So that if there was something negative to come up, it's not going to immediately be dumped into our household when they walk through the door. And also giving me a moment to like, okay, the kids are back. Like, let's get back into our routine. Let's get back into things. Because there have been times at the beginning of our relationship where the kids would be coming back crying or something because they miss their mom, or vice versa. They go back to her house, they miss us, they miss our house, like they miss you. So it's like having that emotion. And I think if the actual parent can kind of work through those emotions before the kids go back to their step parent, I think that's so powerful, because in all reality, when the kids are acting out like that or have a lot of emotions about something, they want their parents. In all reality, they don't want necessarily their step parent. Like, yes, they might love them and we might be like best friends, but like they're really wanting that love and like that companionship from their actual parent to be like, hey, we're here. I love you. We got this. We're about to go home. Like, Beck's making tacos tonight for dinner, whatever the case may be. But just kind of like being that like buffer for the transition days.
Yeah, because I've really heard from even the kids' therapists that those change days are so difficult
Everybody.
on everybody.
Yeah, especially the kids, but really on everyone who's involved.
Yeah, and it's actually quite normal,
Mm.
and that's something I didn't understand originally. Was I was like, man, why are things so hard on exchange days? And that was a big reason for us even changing our schedule, because there was a point where we were changing the kids every 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
Well, if and because our therapist said the kids need about a 24-hour period to reset when changing houses. Well, if you're literally changing houses every 2 to 3 days, they're always in this cycle of kinda chaos.
Yeah.
And when we went to 1 week on, 1 week off, that was actually a major game changer for the kids and our relationship because we now know, okay, that first day, there's going to be a transition period. What are we going to do to protect ourselves, filter things? We're able to do that once every 2 weeks because of what the schedule would change to.
Yeah. And I know a lot of our friends that are in a blended family or are divorced parents, they come to us and they're like, oh, we can't imagine doing 7 days away from my child. Like, it's way too much time. When in all reality, it is 100%. And I think it really depends on how old the kids are. You really need to focus on the kids, obviously, and their emotions and how they're handling it. But you also have to take care of yourself because no one's taking care of you but yourself. You also need to think about, like, how are my emotions when it's like 2 to 5 or whatever the case may be, and it's like this day and this day off and this day, and like keeping up with it and having a life, like keeping up with a life, keeping up with your mental health, keeping up with all that. And like, yes, I know, especially like when we went to the 1 week on, 1 week off, like of course we miss the kids. Like it's a long
Mhm.
7 days when we do have them. Just like when we do have them, it's a long 7 days of having them, you know? But it's also like what works. And I think a lot of people that are in these dynamics get so honed in on the kids, the kids, the kids. I have to take care of the kids. It's the kids. The kids are the priority when they are the priority, especially in our case with type 1 diabetes. But it's also like, how are you doing? How are you handling the schedule? You know, sometimes if it's a certain schedule, there may involve like drop offs and pickups with the other parent. Like, can I handle that? Are you mentally in a good place to be able to be handling these pickups and drop offs with your ex? Like, how is that going? You really have to ask yourself the question too, how am I handling this schedule?
Yes, it's so good. Wow, that was a lot more intense than I thought it was going to be.
I know. I got real talk.
Yeah, I mean, but this is what this is about. This is what this podcast and YouTube show is going to be about,
Mhm.
and it is sharing our story and our challenges, and we really do hope that you guys get something from this. So, please leave us comments if what we said affects you. If you agree, if you disagree, what was your experience like?
Yeah.
And we want to dive deeper. As we do this show longer and longer, we want to keep getting deeper and deeper into these conversations and into our life and what we have shared. And we hope that we can help you guys at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I'm a talker. I love having these honest conversations. They actually feel like a form of therapy for me. So I really encourage you all to get involved. If you can, you know, if our story sounds similar to yours, or you can relate to part of our story, we would love to hear from you. We would love to connect with you. We would love to welcome you into this community because I truly believe that we are stronger together and we just don't know what we don't know. So we are in this together, and I want to thank you for being here again today, and I look forward to the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, Palmr fam.
Bye.